On the first question from Gamu, there are rules of origin which are currently being negotiated, and rules of origin serve a number of purposes. The first purpose rules of origin serve is they assist in the prevention of infiltration, if I can use that word, of third country goods into the AfCFTA market. They enable us to prevent transshipment of goods. We want this agreement to create jobs on the African continent. We do not want this agreement to create job losses. We want this agreement to create jobs. And we have negotiated and structured our rules of origin in such a way that there is a high threshold for value addition, that there is a high standard for value addition. In other words, you will not be able to import a shirt from a third country, put a button on it, and say made in the AfCFTA. We want to foster industrial development on the African continent. This is the second purpose of rules of origin that have a high threshold for value addition. We want to make sure that whether we are talking about raw materials, whether we are talking about commodities, whether we are talking about all products under a country's economy, we want to make sure that 20 to 30 years time, Africa has industrialized, and that leveraging on our rules of origin regime, that we actually create value addition on the African continent. I think if anything that we've learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, it is that we have an over-reliance on the import of all of these products that we require to fight the pandemic, germ-killing products, the personal protection equipment, the masks, and so on. I'm very happy that in the last few months, we have had countries on the African continent redesigning and repurposing their industrial development posture to make sure that we manufacture this equipment that is required to fight the pandemic, that we manufacture it on the African continent. And so rules of origin are very, very important to ensure that we prevent what Gamu is saying, and that is goods that are coming into the AfCFTA market that are not entitled to preferential treatment, who would be getting that preferential treatment. We will have to be robust in implementing and applying our rules of origin regime so that we don't create job losses. And we will have to make sure that we work very closely with customs authorities across the African continent to make sure that we build the capacity of our customs authorities and that we build the enforcement capacity of our customs authorities to fight this issue of transshipment of goods. We are not saying there should be no third country goods. We are simply saying that goods that should enjoy AfCFTA preferential treatment should be goods that are legitimately entitled to AfCFTA preferential treatment. We will still get goods coming in from other parts of the world, but they will not be enjoying the preferences that we have agreed to extend to one another in the AfCFTA. It all will depend on our robust application and implementation of our rules of origin regime. And for that, we will have to work with our customs authorities to ensure that we improve their capacity. We have already had 2 meetings with the customs authorities here in Accra, Ghana, last year. All African customs authorities were here. So these are things that, that we are actively working on at the moment. Now, imports from the diaspora, it will depend on our rules of origin regime. Our rules of origin regime has a very, very stringent standard for products that enjoy preferences, that these products have to be either wholly obtained on the African continent, or there has to be substantive value addition on the African continent of a product that comes in from a third country. And so depending on the product and depending on the threshold for value addition, goods that are coming in from third countries may not enjoy the same preferences as goods that are manufactured on the African continent or where there's value addition on the African continent, because we want to foster industrial development here on the African continent. But I will say this, already we are seeing signals from global investors that they are looking at the African market positively because of our rules of origin regime that is going to be, that will place a high value addition requirement. For example, in the area of automobiles, the local content requirement in many African countries is relatively high. It is relatively high, and the reason is to foster industrial development in country, in region, on the continent of Africa. But some automobile manufacturers look at that as a positive thing, because they look at it as an opportunity to invest on the African continent. And so this question of rules of origin is very, very important and is directly linked to Africa's sustained industrial development over decades to come. The last question about how to partner with us to fulfill the objectives of the AfCFTA, we are always willing to work with similarly minded organizations or institutions or individuals because we recognize this is about advancing Africa's economic development objectives. And Africa's economic development objective is bigger than one individual, is bigger than one institution. It will require that we work together collectively, whether we are on the African continent or outside of the African continent. We will have to work together to make sure that we partner to build investment links, to build regional value chains for industrial development on the African continent, to do all of these things that will accelerate the industrial development of the African continent. And so our door is open to work with you, to partner with you for Africa's industrial development and economic development in general.